Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Tom Still, President of the Wisconsin Technology Council, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar about the 2023 Governor's Business Plan Contest. We're really excited about the contest. It's a process. We've got a couple of folks here with us today who are going to help you walk through from a couple of different perspectives, from a past entrant who did really well in the contest, and a judge who has been a judge for 19 of the 20 years of the existence of this contest. So I know you're going to have questions. So, kind of lob those in through chat anywhere along the way, and we'll get to them as we move along. So the first slide here, hey, important thing, enter by January 31st. And actually you can, the 5 p.m. is a little fungible. You can enter up to just about midnight. And so questions that will come to Julie. All right, next slide. Again, that's me. Joining us today, Dustin Oberbeck. He's with HeyGov, which is based out of Sturgeon Bay. In 2022, he won the information technology category within the contest, and you'll hear there are 4 different categories. We'll talk more about that. Jonathan Fritz. Jonathan's a member of our board of directors, our executive committee, and he's been a judge 19 out of 20 years. He's kind of seen it all over time. He is an attorney by training, and also he's worked in health IT, and now he's with HealthX Ventures, which is based in Madison and doing a lot of investing in this sector. So again, a little more, I mean, we always aim to have at least $100,000 in cash and other prizes. Over time, nearly 4,500 people have entered the contest from a lot of distinct communities around Wisconsin. So, sure, we get a lot from Milwaukee and Madison, but we get almost every city in the state has had at least one entrant over time. So that's really good. And they get to share in a lot of these prizes and the exposure, the investment opportunities, and mentoring. Justin will talk more about that. Next. So yeah, what is it? It's a chance to compete for cash and in-kind prizes, opportunity for constructive feedback. You get this from judges and mentors. And it's a kind of a hands-on way to move move that idea off your desk. Maybe this is a way to fulfill your New Year's resolution. I'm going to write my business plan this year. And so we hope that happens for a lot of you. And it's really, overall, our policy reason to do this is to encourage entrepreneurs, get people plugged into the startup ecosystem here in Wisconsin, and especially around tech-enabled businesses. Some numbers. There's the 19 years, 333 communities, the total entries, and by those categories. Those are 4 categories. They're deliberately broad. We want people to be able to enter, and if you have a plan that you don't think fits exactly in one category, well, our administrators and our judges can move it if it works for you and your advantage. People have raised $300 million in fundraising over time by angel, venture, some grants, and so it's a good thing, and a high 5-year survival rate. Those who make it to that final round, there's a 3/4 chance that they're going to be around for 5 years or more. And that's what we've seen from surveys twice. Here's some examples of some companies that have been out there and done well. And there are many, many more. But you can see the list. But it's people who have, in some cases, exited their companies, and in some cases have grown them to a national level. So we're really proud of the alumni of this contest over time. Some quotes from some people who have been there, done that. Karen Renee of Burlington, eCourt Reporters, which is some recent contests. Laura Gallagher here in Madison. Got Christian Tim from Fond du Lac. I think you'll see the common thread there as you read that is the involvement, the exposure, the chance to get the feedback. Yeah, the prizes are okay, right? But the main reason to do it is to get that plan off the desk and have other people know about what you're up to. The 4 categories again, you start with 250 words or so. We don't count every word, but the system will stop you at a certain point. Product or service description, customer definition, market description, size and sales strategy, and competition. Those are the 4 things you write on out of the box. And again, there's going to be a limit on how much within each one. Highly recommend you spread it out so that you don't have everything in one box. Also highly recommend you don't spend a whole lot of time on technology. It's a business plan contest that is in the technology sphere, not a technology contest. So remember that. And we try to have 12 judges review each plan. So there are a lot of set of eyeballs on each plan as you move ahead. Second phase, top 50, move on. 1,000 words, same first 4 categories, but a little more on management team, financials, and capital needs. And so that's where it starts to get a little more nitty gritty. And that's all along, you could be sending questions to mentors. We have some great mentors. Boot camp, I want to mention one change this year. That'll be February 22nd in Milwaukee at the Reinhardt law firm. We're going to open it up to everybody this year from the beginning, simply because the time schedule is such that you can just plan on, and you'll see more that'll come from Julie Johnson, our administrator, but just plan on coming to that if you can. So whether you're advanced to the top 50 or not. Third phase, pitch decks. Same criteria, but there's a voiceover audio that we'll do. And by the way, we're using a platform this year called Idea Wake, which is based in Wisconsin. And these are people who are very, over time, have been very familiar with the contest. So we're excited to have them, and we think it's a very user-friendly platform. Final phase, this is the Diligent Dozen, and this is where Dustin did well last year, of course, is that you're on stage in Milwaukee at our Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Conference. That'll be in early June, and this is where there's a brief pitch. Judges are there live, as well as everybody else who's at the conference. So it's again a great chance to be in front of people and talk about your plan. There's the full timeline. Again, the 31st of January, which is coming up. That's the deadline. And again, you don't have to be Tolstoy here. I mean, it's 250 words, and it's free to enter. That's the other thing. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything other than your time. And so you can see how the timeline progresses throughout, and there are periods where judging takes place. So that is how it rolls out over the next 4 or 5 months. Well, I want to reintroduce Dustin now. Dustin Overbeck, his company's in Sturgeon Bay, Northeast Wisconsin. Hey Gov, a category winner in 2022. So welcome, Dustin.
All right, thank you. Let's see if I can advance these slides with my computer remotely. All right, I'm going to give you guys the secret formula of how to win the Governor's Business Plan Contest. A few little tricks of the trade based on what I've done going through the contest this time last year. I think the big one is to explain it like I'm 5. If you guys know the phrase ELI5, don't use complex words, complex, some of you are entering software that's, technologically advanced, it's complex. Really try to get it down to a way that you could write it in a way that your grandmother would understand. Because if she can understand it, then probably the judges can also understand it. Not to offend the judges, but they're reading a lot of stuff. And if you can dummy it down, that's actually going to help a lot. Another thing is focus on the step that you're on. Ultimately, you want to win the plan, but just focus on the stage that you're at. So there's 3 stages. Try to win the first stage. And if you get through the first stage, try to win stage 2. So really just focus on those each individual steps. And also don't assume that the judge who read your plan on stage 1 is also going to be the same judge who reads the plan on stage 2. So you have to repeat yourself and just make it obvious so that somebody seeing it for the first time, even though you've already submitted all the information, just make it very basic, very easy, very, understandable. And go ahead, I don't see anybody typing stuff in the chat. So if you type stuff in the chat, I've got the window open. I can also read through those as well. The next part is to be aspirational. This is good advice that I got because I actually contacted somebody who was a VC. while going through the plan, through the contest. And this is one of his big pieces of advice because VCs are actually looking at investing in unicorns. A unicorn is a company that is valued at $1 billion or more. They're not interested in investing in companies that are lifestyle businesses. So if you're planning on living some remote island in the Caribbean, working from a cafe 2 hours a week, that's probably not going to be an interesting business plan to submit. But if you can make a business plan that is aspirational, make it so that you don't lie, though. That's the only advice that I got from the VC is like, make it believable, push for big numbers, push for a big market, look at the total addressable market, make it interesting, but just don't lie with the numbers. And another thing is really to chat with the mentors. Julie does a good job of getting everybody available. Like I had multiple questions. I was able to get in touch with other mentors. There's a lot of organizations in Wisconsin that have people who are there to help. And the nice thing about being in Wisconsin is the fact that we're all friendly people. And so I found it very useful, very helpful to contact past winners. There's actually another company based in the Madison area called Polko. They won, I think, in 2016 or so in the IT category. Even though we're in the same space, he also sells his business sells to municipalities. My business is selling to municipalities. He was more than generous with his time to review some of the things that I've submitted. And still today, we still are on an email basis to get advice and to communicate. So don't be shy to try to reach out to people. And the nice thing about this is when you talk to people, you're actually going to get advice from them. Put that advice back into your story, into your business plan pitch. Make it more compelling. Take that data and put it in there. And it's okay to pivot. More than likely, you're going to change your business idea slightly when you're going through the business plan contest. And it's okay because you're always improving. So more than likely, you're going to change direction. From an actual perspective, the idea that I have now is different from the idea that I had 2 years ago. And it's okay to change your business plan even during the pitch because you actually your goal isn't to ultimately win the contest. Your goal is to have a viable business that's going to maybe raise some money and have a product or service that you can sell to hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people. So always be cognizant of wanting to be able to improve your business plan. And a big thing is to tell an interesting story. I wouldn't say that the software that we're building is all that interesting, but you have to put it in a way that's interesting to people who are reading the business plan, who are going to see you on stage giving the pitch. And a really good solution for this is something that's called the hero's journey. So if anybody has seen Star Wars, you see that there's an unwitting person who essentially becomes the hero of the story. What did they do? They worked with a mentor. They had some conflict and they overcame that conflict. Any television show, movie, business plan should have the same type of storyline. So definitely utilize something like that. And a really interesting feedback that I got talking to other people was to also make the investor a part of the hero in this hero's journey. By them investing in your company, being able to provide a better product or service helps them solve your problem. And they are then part of it because they've invested in you. So think about something like that as well. And then I have a small list of resources. Some of them you may have heard about before. Because the contest is heavily focused on writing in the very beginning, I would leverage the technology that's available to us already. Things like Jasper.ai, I have a subscription to it. I find it very helpful to iterate my ideas and thoughts through that software. November of last year, ChatGPT came out. It's part of OpenAI. It's free. If you can get on the server, sometimes it's blocked. I actually use those two tools on a daily basis. I go back and forth with them to kind of rehash my thoughts and ideas just to make a better story. It doesn't give me final results, but it gives me a really good baseline for draft content that I can work and rework. I also have on here Hemingway Editor. Hemingway Editor is a really cool, inexpensive tool that you can copy and paste your content into, and it'll do a word count and things like that. But what it really helps with is making your copy at a certain level. So it'll highlight words if you're using the passive tense, because you're not supposed to use the passive tense according to Hemingway editor. Lets you know if you're writing at a ninth grade level, and more than likely you want to probably be writing at a sixth grade level. So it lets you know and highlights the text that should maybe be dummied down a little bit. Use smaller sentences because ultimately you want to be able to communicate, and that's the big part of this is to communicate your business plan idea in the format that the business plan contest has. And then for ideas about storytelling, a really good book that's not too expensive on Amazon, probably available at your local library, is Building a Story Brand. I really recommend checking that out. It tells more about the hero's journey and the aspects of it. There's actually a free website available that allows you to build your story, the hero's journey through that. And it's affiliated with the book, so it's really helpful. And the second one is this video by Matthew Key. He is part of Tundra Angels, and that's in Green Bay. And there's a video that's made available that talks about this, and it's actually talking about the story brand. And he goes through his pitch that he did when he went through accelerators and was talking to VCs. So those are two, small tools, resources that I would recommend checking out. And then if you guys do have additional questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available on LinkedIn. I got email, and we even have a phone number. So happy to help if anybody, wants advice going through it this next year.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dustin. Let's spend a few minutes just talking here, among ourselves. I remember that especially your presentation at the end. I mean, everything was well written, and that is very important. But your presentation at the end was animated. I mean, you had energy in that, and I think the judges and others could feel the passion you had around the kind of work you do. And actually, we should talk a little more about HeyGov itself in terms of what the platform does.
Yeah. Originally, the idea for HeyGov was to be a pothole app because there's software out there. We sell to local government. Potholes are things that occur in municipalities, graffiti, things that people want to complain about or report. And there are tools that sell for many tens of thousands of dollars to larger municipalities. And I thought, why don't we build one here in Wisconsin? So I built it, a very basic version of it, and started pitching it to municipalities. And they all were like, yeah, it looks nice, but none of them really wanted to pay for it. Another book I recommend reading is called The Mom Test. If I would have read that book a few months earlier, I would have wasted a little bit less time. I'll just type it in. The Mom Test. And then once I started having more calls and interviews with potential customers, I found out that there was a lot of friction in how they're doing things because during the pandemic, everything had to go from paper-based to online. So our solution became now what is a payment solution so that municipalities can allow, and that's why this image here, we had some custom illustration designed to show that people can pay their water bills online with a mobile phone. They can reserve a boat, pay for a boat launch instead of putting $5 in a metal drop box at the boat launch. They can just scan a QR code with their phone and pay for it just right then and there, or pay for anything in person, like water bills, tax bills, dog licenses, and things like that. So now it's a payment solution. We've now got more than 150 customers in 16 different states. And we had a really good month last year in December. So we now have a solution that's used across many, many states. And it really comes down to communicating in a way that people can really understand.
And a year ago, how many states were you in? I'm going to guess maybe just Wisconsin.
Yeah, we only had basically the first customer came in September of 2021, and they were based, here in Wisconsin. And we got around, I think, 8 customers initially. I think when I did the business plan contest, pitched on stage in June, we had, I think, 15 or maybe upwards of 20. But now we have 150. So it's been a big change with that. And so, it was really
That's
comes
good. I
down
mean,
to
that's a big part of over time, that's been a big part of the contest is just the exposure. I mean, in front of
Yep.
people who are there live at the entrepreneurs conference, others who see it, the judges themselves, others. So it just starts a conversation. So, hey, Gov becomes a part of the conversation. And that could happen for others too. Um, we have a number of judges, and we'll move to Jonathan here in a minute. But a number of judges who do have extensive investment background. They're either angels or VCs, or maybe they're somewhere else out there. Some have been elsewhere in the financial world. What else can you say about what the contest taught you about how to talk to angels and VCs?
Well, I went early into this. I knew that I would get a lot of no's because statistically speaking, you're going to get a lot of no's.
Right.
And so I actually had people, when I would get on a call with people, they're like, we don't write a check right away. Like, yeah, I totally know that. But one thing that I was really surprised about is that originally I thought if we can do $1 million a year, that's going to be great. Nobody was excited for $1 million a year. They're like, you got to be aspirational with this. Like, we get excited about business that does $10 million a year, $100 million a year. So part of going through the process was to think bigger. And that's why I have a couple slides in there talking about being aspirational, but without lying. You got to think big. And that's what VCs want to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very good. Well, I think that's a great cue to bring in Jonathan Fritz. If you can join in here. Jonathan, thank you again for being with us.
Sure.
And as we said at the outset, you've judged 19 of the 20 contests. So you've seen a lot of really good plans, probably some not so good plans. But let's just have you talk a little bit about that, and we'll continue the conversation and keep, Dustin involved in that as well. So Jonathan, go ahead.
So I think it would be, thanks, Tom, by the way, and appreciate the Tech Council putting this on, because I know over the years it's really helpful for entrepreneurs that are considering starting a business, that have ideas, not quite sure where to get started. And this process gives a framework, gives a mechanism for Wisconsin entrepreneurs to actually kind of get going and help along the way. Just a minute about my background so that folks can kind of have an understanding of where I'm coming from. So I've been working with startups in various capacities for over 20 years. Spent 12 years practicing law, startup, venture capital attorney. I'm also a patent attorney by training, former partner at Michael Best and Friedrich, had multiple operating roles in startup companies, as well as now being a partner at HealthX Ventures. And we are an early stage digital health venture fund in Madison. I'm also a mentor for the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator, which is a health system in Los Angeles, as well as Creative Destruction Lab, Wisconsin, here in Madison. And also I've been on the investment committee of Brightstar Foundation for about 8 years, and have been an angel investor before being a professional VC. So have seen thousands of business plans, all different technology areas. And from the contest standpoint, I think there's a few like table stakes items, and it may sound a bit amusing to even talk about these things, but grammatical errors. You would be surprised at how many of the business plans have grammatical errors, unfinished sentences, improper punctuation, things don't flow. And quite frankly, the judges are putting their time into this for free. They're donating their time. And so when you're reading a plan and, if it doesn't come across as though time, effort, consideration has been put into it, it's going to be reflected in the scores. And so even if that means having a family member or a colleague or a friend, read over your submission before you press send, highly recommend that. Just things about this is it's a contest. To Dustin's point is that think about the stages, and your goal is to get to the next stage, and the contest is structured so that by getting to the next stage, your idea, your business is being, and you as an entrepreneur are being helped. But think about it, it's a contest. And so your goal is to get to the next stage. So pay very close attention to what the rules are. The judges are judging based upon those rules. And, if it says you need to identify, these sort of areas, if you will, and then they're judged on that, you'd also be surprised number of times areas are left blank. And don't do that, because it ends up in being a 0 for that section. So just pay really close attention to the details, to the the rules, if you will, of the contest. A couple other things to think about is that the judges come from a variety of different backgrounds. There are service providers like accountants and attorneys. There are investors. There are successful business women and men. There are other people that bring kind of a business savvy background. And so it's not just a uniform type of judge. And so to kind of consider that you're writing for a broad sort of kind of business savvy population of judges, and to consider that. I think it's also helpful that when you're selecting which one of the categories, there can be a little bit of strategy. To Tom's point is that there isn't necessarily hard and fast rules on which category you should go into. And quite frankly, oftentimes, there are business plans that could be in 2, sometimes 3 different categories. And kind of consider and look at the information that's available, because there could be some strategy where there's fewer entries over time in one of the areas, and if there are fewer entries, then you might have a better chance of advancing if you're in that category. A few other things to kind of consider. When you're putting together the 250 words, it can be very difficult, because it's hard to distill an idea and a business into such a small number of words. And so it will take time, and you want to iterate through that. But at the end of the day, you're proposing to create, or you have created, a business. And this business may or may not be seeking funding, but at the end of the day, the question is going to be, can you execute on this idea, on this business, that you're proposing or that you've started? And even in that 250 words, I would, have a little bit of commentary on your team. Doesn't have to be full blown like the second iteration, if you will, and having the management team section, but really to convey, is that possible? Can you execute? Steer away from things like, hey, this is a $25 billion market and we only want 1% of it, and so therefore this is like a huge opportunity. Judges can see right through that. Be very forthright as far as what the size of the market, what the total addressable market is, and not try and kind of make it look like it's a big opportunity and then you only want 1% of a big market. Because the question is why would you only want 1% of the market? Why wouldn't you want to have a significant controlling share of the market? Another thing to kind of think about is that, you want to focus on the business case here. There are a number of submissions that have been for nonprofits, and there isn't a hard and fast rule that it has to be for profit, but generally this is going to be more of a contest for-profit entities. generally having more of a tech component, as you would imagine, around it. And so really focusing on that business case. Some things to also think about is like this isn't necessarily the first submission, but if you're lucky enough to get to the end and you're one of the diligent dozen and you're presenting, and maybe even the round before that, what we found is, and I've seen, is that the CEO founder, especially if you have more people on your team, that individual may not be the best person to be up on stage presenting. Many cases it is, and folks want to hear from the person that's created the company, who has the passion and who's going to really work to advance it. But if you yourself know you don't have the greatest presentation skills, and you've got someone else on your team that may be better, that can present better, consider using them or having them pitch in that spot, because we've seen a few situations, Tom, where it's unfortunate where there maybe wasn't enough preparation, or maybe the individuals just aren't comfortable in front of a large public audience. But it's one of those things to consider.
Oh yeah, we've had our share of NASCAR wrecks and the people running the car into the rail on the diligent dozen, which is unfortunate. It doesn't need to happen. Because
it doesn't. And it just takes recognition of, are you, the type of person, it's not for everybody, but are you the type of person that has, the ability to get in front of a large public audience and do that pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I would stress is that, to the extent that, and this is for, all stages, but to the extent that you've talked to customers or potential customers and you have data, you have feedback, include that information. And that is even for an idea. And it may even be, hey, I talked to 10 people and the feedback was they would buy this product, or they would use this service, or there's a need, because that has a signaling effect to the judges to say, hey, there might actually be a market for this, or there might actually be a need for this product or service. And including that, I think, would be really helpful. And certainly there's a number of other things, but happy to field any questions, any things that are on folks' mind about the contest.
Thanks, Jonathan. A couple of great points that you made. I mean, the notion, and Dustin made the same point, worry about the stage you're in and get through there, and then be ready for the next stage. And it's like, coaches in athletics, I mean, they're always telling their teams, just focus on the next game, not 3 games down the way, but the next game. So that's really important. You reemphasize the writing piece, and just the fact that some people just, it could be grammatical, could spelling, all kinds of things that can, be a impediment. Moving categories. I know you and I, Jonathan, over time have talked about this from time to time. Would this plan be better in IT or business services or some other category? Because again, it's deliberately broad to give people those kinds of choices. The notion of data, feedback, sales, information, and team. I want to focus on that a little bit. As you get further down the line in the contest, I think judges take a look at who else is on the team, who makes up the team. Will it be people who there's a sense that they have what it takes to bring this over the goal line, and have they been there before? Have they done something similar? Talk about that a little bit, Jonathan. And Dustin, I think that was good for you too, because you had others who could help.
Yeah, it's a really important element, because it comes to execution, and it comes to whether your plan, whether your idea for this business, whether you can actually execute upon it. And, from an investor standpoint, it's much better to have a B, an A team with a B idea than the flip. You really, because you probably heard of the phrase, pivoting. I think we even, have talked about that, is that if you've got a great team and you find out that your initial idea or initial kind of approach is wrong, well, that great team can pivot and potentially find, a better way of doing it. And, the other thing is that don't feel as if you're with being the only person, if you're a sole the only person on the team, don't feel as though that's inadequate, because one thing you can do is indicate the kind of areas that you would look to fill and identify that. And even if you've got 2 or 3 people on your team, and to say, our plan is, after raising capital, we're going to add, a head of sales, or we're going to add a COO with this sort of background. And being able to convey that information, that you already know where there are holes that need to be filled, and to really fill that out, I think is really important. And one other thing I wanted to mention, unrelated to team, is the idea of competition.
Yeah.
There is always competition. It doesn't matter if what you've created isn't in the market. Inaction is competition. How people are solving that problem today is competition. So we have seen time and time again the comment, well, there's no competition, and so this is going to be a great idea and people are going to buy it. And that's just not accurate. So you really think about what the true competition is in the eyes of the consumer for the product or service that you're looking to sell.
Exactly. Let's go back to Dustin and HeyGov on this. Consumer inaction is competition. Local governments that might say, oh, I've always done it this way, why should I change? That's competition, right, Dustin?
Yeah, absolutely. Status quo, changing people's methods and process from going from paper to a digital service. People sometimes just want to stick with what they currently have. And yeah, I wanted to mention expand on a couple things about team.
Yeah.
So typically when a company's early stage, if they haven't yet built the product or service, they might only have the solo founder. They might not have a team yet. We were unique in this. I think the fact that we had already invested money, had a development team, had a sales team set up in place, and we already had paying customers. That was probably one of the differentiating factors from us versus maybe other companies that are competing. That doesn't mean you can't compete and still win with just having an idea, but the difference is that it's all on one person. It's usually that person who has to do talk about the product, the idea, do customer discovery, figure out what the go-to-market strategy is going to be, what it's going to take to raise funds. So I think in these cases, early stage companies are going to be very small. Those that have a product built will be a slightly bigger. Those that have paying customers might even be a little bit bigger then.
Mm-hmm. And as Jonathan mentioned, it could be just you on the team at this point as an entrant into the contest, but recognizing that you need other people in some of these key spots, and looking down the road and seeing that. And just, and I think don't be afraid to list informal advisors as well. People who might be helping on the side that aren't necessarily slotted in, in any kind of formal way, but could be there to help. So good. And, over time, I mean, we have seen plans that really were just kind of one person at the time, but they grew throughout the contest itself. Over the course of 4 or 5 months, with the kind of advice they got, they were able to, to build on where they were. So it's not always just about advancing to this next stage. It's about taking advantage of every stage to learn what you can and get the advice you can.
And also multiple years of entries. I think about, was it Janet Vector Surgical? Is that right?
Yes,
Tom?
we have seen that. This was on the slide I did earlier, but Janet Phillips with Vector Surgical, which is now operating all over the country and around the world. They entered the first year. I think they made the top 50, but that was it. Second year, they made the next stage. Third year they won because, you know, she and her team had really kept at it and made sure that they were, you know, they were sticking to it. They were stubborn, and that's what you need sometimes. You know, and I think judges and the market itself will react to that. They'll see that, you know, it's some people who have the stick to itness to see the way through. And there've been other examples that are similar. So, okay, well, make sure, feel free to get your questions in the chat, and we'd love to chat about those. Anything else before we close, Jonathan? I'm going to go back to this. I mean, stick with us. We're going to hear, we'll probably get some questions, but I'm going to go through some other points here that may be helpful to those who are online. So, okay. I mentioned there are prizes, cash and in-kind prizes. We had $125,000 worth in 2021. We're always looking for more. So, but you know, it can be people who have legal services, accounting services, web development, office space. We've seen that a lot over time, prototyping, marketing, other pieces that are all valuable to entrepreneurs. And so let's see, let's go to the next one. The eligibility. So some frequently asked questions. Who is eligible? Well, got to be 18 or older, or and we can have young, you know, youth teams. If there's at least one person 18, they can enter. So it's got to leverage, employer leverage technology. You'll read here about what that is. So it doesn't mean that you have to have, you don't have to invent the next competitor to Chat GPT. I mean, you can have things that are just at least have that technology focus. Based in Wisconsin or plan to locate here. We have had people apply from other states in the past, and in some cases move to Wisconsin. So that's great. And this is one that is, the next one is important. It can't receive more than $50,000 in private equity funding as of the deadline for the contest. So January 31st. So private equity is generally going to be angel, venture, but you can have equity investments by accelerators as long as it's not, you know, getting over that 50,000. But it doesn't include things like SBIR grants, bank loans, non-dilutive accelerator program grants, or funding from friends or family. So if you got any questions on that, just shoot those into to Julie at the info@govsbizplancontest.com, and we'll do our best to make sure that we answer those. Next, and can I use intellectual property in my business? Yes. Again, it's not a technology contest. You don't have to spend all your time and effort describing the tech and the IP behind it, but it has to be yours. It has to be either owned or licensed by you, or, you know, something that's in your possession. So you see some examples there. And again, you know, if you got any questions on that, let us know. Can you enter more than one idea? Yes. There's no upper limit. You know, and some people, you know, we've seen multiple entries from people over time, and they might think of ways that it could fit into one, you know, multiple categories. So that's the one thing. You can't enter, you know, multiple entries in one category, but you can spread them out over that. And you would have, this is a technical piece, you have to have a new account for each entry. So a separate email account for each one that you do. And again, go to info@govsbizplancontest.com if you got any questions about that. Some resources, SCORE. Around the state, they've been valuable mentors over time. The Center for Technology Commercialization is great. They've been doing things in this contest for a long time, and a lot of experience around, especially grants and some of the next phases around that. And online on our website, you can go to find the Wisconsin Entrepreneurs Toolkit, which has a bunch of resources. And so that's something definitely to take a look at. So there's Julie again. I'm going to get back to the chat here. All right. Excuse me, I want to take a look. What do you think is the best category for a CPG product? So basically consumer goods. Jonathan?
Well, I mean, I guess it somewhat depends upon the nature of the product, but it could be advanced manufacturing, could be life sciences.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it too fitting into a variety of things. So as noted earlier, business services and IT, yeah, this is me. Can you comment on the interplay between the governor's business plan contest and other entrepreneurship programs, such as the ones provided by D2P at UW-Madison and I-Corps? I think I would always tell people to take part in as many things as they have time and capacity to do. Many times we'll see that there are entries from, for example, D2P in Madison, or sometimes they're the people who take part in the contest. We might refer to D2P just as an example. It's kind of a two-way street. Dustin, can you think of anything there, or Jonathan, in terms of how you looked at that?
I put a note in that I actually applied through a grant through the Center of Technology Commercialization.
Oh yeah, there you go. Perfect example. The idea advance. We hope and believe most entrepreneurs who enter the contest can take advantage of other things that are going on in Wisconsin. And that wasn't the case, 20 years ago. It was a lot more lonely for many entrepreneurs who were doing things in Wisconsin. And so that led to a $25,000 grant for HeyGov. So that's interesting right there. Let's see here. Other questions. And then other contestants have always also received funding through SBIR. Again, that's where the Center for Technology Commercialization can help guide you through that. Generally, Wisconsin could stand to do a lot better in its ability to attract SBIR grants from the federal government. Those come through 11 different federal agencies. They all have different things that they care about and focus on, but it's you do have a good shot at getting such a grant if you have the right application. Anything else for now? Well, if not, I want to. Oh, here. Oh, will the recording be sent out to registered attendees? We will check on that. Quite possibly so. I think so. Yeah. Anything else? Any other chats? Good. I think that is it. Well, I really appreciate Dustin and Jonathan taking part in this. Anything we haven't covered? Any closing comments that you'd like to make?
No, I think I've covered everything that I know at this point.
Yeah, that's good.
But if people want to reach out to me, again, there are people who are in Wisconsin that want to help. So just send an email, chat, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Dustin's been through it and went through it well. So we could hear. And Jonathan, can people reach out to you at HealthX if interested?
Sure. Yeah, okay. Happy to. In one last comment I would make is, if you're questioning whether or not to enter it. Just do it. It will be a valuable process for you, and highly encourage you to enter the contest. Yeah.
Again, it's free to enter. There's only 250 words at the outset. Who knows? Maybe you had the start of your plan on a bar napkin at some point, and then you can expand from there. But yeah, it's well worth it, and hopefully you'll see some of the feedback. So, all right. Well, thanks to our participants. Thanks to our team for being part of this, and especially to Jonathan and Dustin talking about their experiences over time. All right. Take care. Thank you all.